Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Well, if we're talking about women's basketball, the answer is Caitlin Clark. Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets. I almost forgot my name. What are we talking about today? We're talking about Caitlin Clark. You know, the classic fairy tale of Snow White is practically an ode to both female virtue and toxic femininity. Female virtue and Snow White, both beautiful, both inside and out, right? And then you have this evil queen, just green and just filled with envy and resentment because she was in fact not the most beautiful woman in all the land. And so she concocted this entire scheme to try to get this Snow White, this pure innocent girl, to basically have her life destroyed because she didn't like the fact that she wasn't the fairest of them all. We actually see this sort of thing in other fairy tales like Cinderella. If you remember Cinderella, she was brutally mistreated by a bunch of selfish and shallow girls who she was their superior in every way, but they mistreated her at every step. The only way they could keep her down is by mistreating her. But in fact, her virtue and her beauty won out in the end. And these classic stories, the reason why they resonate so much with us is because there is a clear and obvious truth that we see in real life that we see reflected in those fairy tales. Toxic femininity is a real thing. You know, we don't have any problem pointing out these sort of flaws and the issues that men need to deal with when, in fact, we come across them. Like, for example, we talk about toxic masculinity. Now, I don't believe in toxic masculinity in the way that it is generally portrayed. What we call toxic masculinity is just plain old masculinity. But there is a sense in which it can become over the top, overly aggressive, this kind of fake machismo, this kind of like overcompensating for your feelings of inadequacy by being unduly aggressive. It's a real thing. Here's an example of what I mean.
Make an argument. I will smack your
You're gonna attack. You're gonna attack.
All right. Nobody's
Do you usually attack armed men in Florida?
Dude.
All right.
Be cold.
Let's just
yourself.
Okay,
guys.
I've never seen such a pathetic mother.
Okay, well,
let's chill out a little bit, man. A little bit.
So we can see that, toxic masculinity can be a real thing. And it's a thing that is peculiar to men. And that's what I want to underscore. This sort of overly aggressiveness, this kind of almost violent tendencies, this is generally something that doesn't plague women. And the reason why is because men and women are different. And no matter how much we try to insist that men and women are not different, it comes up in situations like this. There are women who are aggressive and can be violent, but when we talk about this sort of phenomenon, we are talking about almost exclusively the domain of men whenever we see it this acutely. Now, what about women? Women don't tend to express their dysfunction in the sort of violence and the sort of over-aggression that we see amongst men. But one way it does tend to manifest is in envy, jealousy, being mad at people just for no reason. This is why that mirror, mirror on the wall, this is why this fairy tale, this is why that line resonates with so many people. And that's why the classic story was so well received. Because everyone knows what we mean when we say that women tend to be jealous in a way that men are not. In the same way that men tend to be overly aggressive in a way that women are not. It's just a function of our biology and our general makeup. But whenever we point this out in women, somehow it's a problem. Somehow we have to qualify it. Somehow we have to couch it.
You women out there, y'all petty, man. LeBron, you're 100% right on these girls hating on Caitlin Clark. Y'all petty, girls. I expect men to be petty. Because we're the most insecure group in the world.
It's only the women that you can't criticize. And everyone and their mom can see that Caitlin Clark is being mistreated because they are jealous of her. Let's first of all deal with the fact that Caitlin Clark is in fact different. Everyone wants to pretend that she's not. we see all these people saying, oh, the WNBA has been this, it's always been this, it's always been that. I'm sorry, but Caitlin Clark has brought attention to your league in a way that no one else has and no one else, quite frankly, could have. Just to give you an example of how exceptional Caitlin Clark is, the University of South Carolina women's basketball team is basically an all-star team. Their college basketball team, I think, could probably almost be a WNBA team. I'm not saying that they would, be able to compete with the WNBA women, but they're pretty close. In the last 2 seasons, they've lost exactly 1 game out of 75. They went 36-1 in the previous year, and they went 38-0 this year. The one loss, to Caitlin Clark, after she gave them a 40-piece. Now, a team that good is almost unbeatable, unless you've got someone who is a one-of-one talent, a transcendent player, a player who can even the odds single-handedly, such as Caitlin Clark is, and that's exactly what she did. She also happens to be, the all-time leading scorer in the history of college basketball, NCAA, both men's and women's. So to say that, she's different is an understatement. But it's not just that she's good at basketball. She's actually entertaining. I, as a person, I always start off my little podcast or my little video vlogs or what have you, whatever you want to call it. I always started off saying, I am Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets. And the reason why I say I'm a getter of buckets is because I am, in fact, a getter of buckets. I played Division I college basketball, so I know a thing or two about the game. And I can tell you that before Caitlin Clark came on the scene, I had absolutely no interest in women's basketball. That's just a fact. The reason why I didn't have any interest in the women's game is because women are not only not as athletic and explosive, so you don't get the alley-oop plays, the dunks, the super athleticism that you see at the highest level of men's basketball, but generally speaking, the skill level is also lower. And that's just a fact. Women tend not to have the same ability to shoot, handle the ball, make special passes. It's just a different game. But when I watch Caitlin Clark play, I can't say that that's true. She can do things that I think a lot of men's players can't even do at their respective levels. I'm not saying that Caitlin Clark's better than the men. I'm not saying that. That's silly. But what I am saying is that when I watch Caitlin Clark play, I can say unequivocally, she is different and she is fun to watch. And that is the recipe for bringing attention to the women's game. But are the women appreciative of that? Well, apparently not. Apparently, the women would rather wallow in obscurity than have Caitlin Clark be responsible for single-handedly lifting their league out of the depths of despair. And for the first time, there's hope that a player of Caitlin Clark's caliber can actually turn that around. Instead of, being thankful for that, what does she get? A bunch of hate, a bunch of jealousy. And then we have to deal with the fact that everyone and many who are have motivated reasoning are pretending like this hatred and jealousy is not plain to see. But there's an interesting kind of twist to this, because I think it's important to understand that because of this particular tendency of women to be more prone to jealousy and envy and resentment, this is the reason why many left-wing political movements are led by women.
She's a trained Marxist. And Eric Mann is the man who trained her.
I spend my time right now organizing mainly young people that want to be revolutionaries. Young, primarily women, Black, Latina, Asian.
Women become the mouthpiece of this left-wing activism because the fuel of left-wing activism is often envy and resentment. Look at Greta Thunberg, Black Lives Matter, many political pundits and talking heads, often women, just silly, overly aggressive, just spewing with envy, resentment. It's pretty sad, to be quite honest. And when you look at that and we acknowledge that for what it is, what do we get? We get shouted down. But the truth of the matter is this. Ladies, you have to recognize that this is something that you have to police yourselves. We have to have the women, just like we had women who are standing up for women's sports, women who are standing up against some of the encroachments of men by the transformers, if you know what I mean. We need women to stand up and say, let's stop making excuses for this toxic femininity. Let's stop pretending like this is not utter and outright jealousy. And we need to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to make sure that our game moves forward. Let's not kill the golden goose. But let me know what you think. Do you think this is, you think I'm overstating it? Do you think this is something that is just, hey, it's just competition? Or is the obvious fact that this is a little bit over the top? This seems to me to be obviously jealousy and resentment. Do you agree that that's what's going on here? Let me know in the comments. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, my friends, God bless you.